most of us will know that we've been going through a series of teaching about deliverance, and we've been putting some of that into practice. And last week, Paul gave us a different angle on it. Thank you, Paul. There you go. You see, look at that. Look at that. Somebody took something away. Lovely. Super. And George, you're fine. You can talk anytime you like, mate. You can contribute. That's fine. It's fine. What I wanted to do this morning was to try and take a bird's eye view and come back at this from a slightly different angle. We all know, well, most of us know, that when the world was created, when God created the heaven, the earth, and everything that was in it, it was all perfect. We know it was perfect because Scripture says it was perfect. When he created Adam and Eve, he created them perfect. And everything was in its place, and everything was fine, and Adam and Eve were essentially God's priests on earth doing his work, but it went wrong. We know it went wrong. We had a fall. That's what we generally call it, and it all went to pieces. We see that we had the flood. You remember the flood, and of course we had the Tower of Babel, when everybody on earth rebelled against God, saying, I can do it my way. Does that ring a bell? Somebody recently sang about that, didn't they? Well, I say recently, I mean in recent decades. Yeah. I don't know what he's doing now, but yeah. Good. Okay. Now, this is when software... Yes, okay, fine. And God said at that point that he was dispersing everybody throughout the earth because everything had gone wrong. But from the very first moment, God had in mind a plan. And the plan is to bring it all back together again. And however you have looked at this recent series on deliverance, if you haven't seen it like that yet, then look at it like that. God is trying to bring everything back together again, and he has a plan. The plan is in place. He's made the plan known through his scriptures. It's up to us to hook into the plan and decide that we are working with him towards that plan. Not only just for us, but for those of us that we rub shoulders with every day. Now that plan had to get put in place somehow. He chose a man called Abram. Now, clearly, at the moment that he spoke to Abram, Abram couldn't have known the whole thing that was going to be revealed to him over time. So slowly, through Abram, God was revealing the plan, unfolding the plan, if you like, and beginning to show through him where it was he wanted him to go. If you want some scriptures in front of you this morning, I will attempt to keep pace. We already referred to Genesis chapter 1 and 26 and 28. We're moving on to Genesis chapter 12 right now. And essentially in Genesis chapter 12 is the call of Abraham, and the key verse, I will read it now because in a minute it becomes relevant and I might not have the presence of mind to remind you where it came from. Genesis 12, verse 2 and 3, he says, I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Okay? When next you're walking through a hospital ward and you see all the equipment and all the medicine and all the technology, you'll know that a whole load of that has come through Abraham. That's just an aside. Okay, so there needed to be a plan. Abraham was the beginning of the plan, and there is the promise. And so he started to put it into place. He was asked to leave his home. He made a step of faith. We're not going to go into that right now. But his family began to grow. He had his nephew Lot with him, you'll remember. And he was off. He left his home behind, and he was out as effectively a nomad. And their flocks, their herds, their families got so big at one point that they had to split. Lot looked out, and Abram allowed Lot to make the choice of which direction he was going in. At this point, I have to say, Lot didn't do a lot of homework. He looked and saw the bit he liked the look of the best. Have you ever made that mistake? Guilty as charged. Instead of saying to God, where do you want me to go? He said, I want to go my way. And he chose the place that he wanted to go. What he didn't know, and I'm cutting this story really short, is that he was going into an area of turmoil. We later read, of course, that he lived in Sodom. What we don't read of at that point, but we read of it any minute now, and I'll take you there in just a second, we see that there were kings in the plain of Sodom, and they were at war. And that is a problem. It was a problem for Lot because he actually chose the wrong way to go for the wrong reason. Now we're in Genesis chapter 14 now. And you will see in the first verses of chapter 14, like 1 through 12, 11, something like that, that there were 4 kings and there were 5 kings. There were 4 kingdoms and there were 5 kingdoms. And these kingdoms were doing battle. And Lot got caught up in the battle. And at one point, when the 4 kings and the 5 kings were fighting, Lot got taken captive. We know the story, don't we? Well, quite a few of us know the story. If you're not familiar with it, it's there. You can read it in not very many verses, okay? Now, whilst these 4 kings and 5 kings were arguing, and they thought they knew what they were doing, inadvertently, they trod on the toes of God himself. Because if we go back to the Genesis chapter 12, verses 2 and 3, we see what God's promise to Abram, because he was still called Abram at that point, okay? And we see that God's promise was not only for Abram, but he said, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And he obviously was including the whole of Abram's family. So as soon as Lot gets captured, Abraham is on high alert, okay? So we're in chapter 14, we're in verse 12. They also carried off Abraham's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. The one who escaped came and reported this to Abram the Hebrew. Now Abram was living near the great trees of Mamre the Amorite, a brother of Eshcol. When Abraham heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. Can I just put a little bit of, meat around those bones just for a second? Abraham had 318 men. I don't know if that rings a bell to you at all. There was somebody else some years later who had 300 men to fight a battle which was impossible. Abraham actually led the way. 4 kings, 5 kings. Now, the scriptures are actually a little vague. So therefore, that means when the scriptures are vague, it means that we don't actually need to know. So there's no need to put an awful lot of effort into it. And I wouldn't suggest you did unless you wanted to make it a life's work. It probably would be. But 4 kings plus 5 kings fighting and taking one man or one family hostage, it's not going to be 318 people. Seriously, isn't it? It's going to be quite a few people. And all that lot who had fought together and came under one king took one family. And now he's in trouble, this guy, because Abraham's on the move. Okay. Because Abraham believed God. Now, can that be said of you? There's a question. It's a question. Could you be accused of believing God? I hope there's enough evidence to say yes. I do. I do. Because we need to be in that place where if God speaks, we say, yeah, we will do it. So, having remembered the promise from Genesis 12, 2 and 3, Abraham did not hesitate to set out with his 318 men. He went from Mamre to Dan. Now we read that ever so quickly, don't we? Psst, just like that. How long did that take? Any idea? It's all right, it's a rhetorical question. You don't need to answer. 150 miles. So Abraham's taking his 318 men, 150 miles, 6 days journey. That's at forced march. And when he got there, he didn't hesitate. He went straight for the kill, as it were. He not only routed his enemy, he got back his family, and he took all the spoils. 4 kings worth, 5 kings worth, 9 kings worth of spoils, plus his family. And he brings them all back. Now I'm going to ask you a question. If that was you, what would you kind of be feeling like at that point? Okay, you've got another journey to go all the way back home, I can see that. And you're going to be pretty worn out. But I would say that you'd feel pretty euphoric. I've done it! I've done it! I was successful. I only had 318 men. I went in at night time and I got them. I got my lad. And all this booty. I'm the greatest. You know, I mean, I can almost hear it, you know. I can almost hear all the revelry. He recovered everything. And when the scriptures say routed, by the way, routed does mean crushing, decisive. It wasn't just a fluke of the moment. And then we come to what this morning is all about. He's come back from Dan. He's come to the King's Valley. Not the Valley of the Kings, by the way. Valley of the Kings is down in Egypt. The King's Valley is just beside what we now know as Jerusalem. 25 miles to home. 2 days left to march. and somebody appears out of nowhere. The man's name that appears is Melchizedek. Melchizedek, almost as it were, appears out of nowhere. He is called in Scripture a king and a priest. And you know, can I roll on a little minute? Can we go on? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, in the pit, down to Egypt, good times, bad times, 400 years, 430 years, I think, as slaves in the desert, Moses, Sinai, and the appointment of Aaron as the priest. Yep. I don't know how many years I've gone through there. I didn't do that little bit of research, but it's going to be quite a while, okay? Now, so down the road, there was a system put in place where there were priests who came from the tribe of Levi, and there were kings who came from the tribe of Judah, and that was some time later. Apart from Saul, before you tell me that I'm out of order, I did notice that Saul wasn't, and there was a good reason for that, and that's down to the 10 generations sins passed on to the, and Jenny and Steve covered that some weeks ago, so I'm not going to go back there this morning. So you couldn't be a priest and a king. It's one or the other, because you can't come from both places at the same time. But this man, who comes out of nowhere, is a priest and a king. And I just want to, so we're in verse 18, by the way. Sorry, I didn't tell you that, did I? Chapter 14, verse 18. So Abraham returned from defeating the kings, that's in 17, and he came to this valley, that was in 17, and then Melchizedek appeared in verse 18, okay. And he brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God the Most High, and he blessed Abraham, saying, "Blessed be Abraham by God Most High." Now, I don't want to skip on too quickly. I've got this euphoric man who's just beaten 4 kings plus 5 kings, and he's got his nephew back, and he's got all this booty, and he's the greatest man on earth. And he appears in this plain, in the Valley of the Kings, the King's Valley, I beg your pardon, in the King's Valley. He sees Melchizedek there, and he stops, and he recognizes in Melchizedek something interesting. So he allows Melchizedek to speak, as it were, because he's the greatest, isn't he? Abraham's the greatest. He's just beaten all these people. He could just beat a few more if he needed to. But no, he recognizes in Melchizedek something which was unusual. And he allowed Melchizedek to give blessing. Blessed be Abraham by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. So now we have a salutary moment when Abraham has been reminded by this man, this priest, this king who comes out of nowhere, that his victory was given to him by his God, the one who made the promise that we looked at just a moment ago. And that is a moment for Abram to actually come to terms with what in the world happened 2 days ago, 3 days ago, up in Dan, as far north as you can pretty much get in the land of Israel. And he did something quite remarkable. Then Abram gave him a tenth of everything. Abraham gave him a tenth of everything because it was a law for him to do so. No. No law. He gave him a tenth of everything because of what we've been singing about this morning. What was one of the main themes that we've sung about this morning is gratefulness. He recognized in the words of Melchizedek the truth that his victory was due to his God, who he's only just beginning to get to know. Remember, the whole world had forsaken God. The whole concept of God being the greatest was, if you like, nowhere to be seen. It was all, I'll do it my way, just like it is today. Just like it is today. If you take the average opinion of the people who live on your street, it's, I will do it my way. They love the song, they love the tune, they love the theme, nuts to everybody, I'll do it my way. That was the prevailing thought of Abraham's time. And Abraham had to get to understand that God worked in a different way. And there was so much for him to comprehend. There was a huge amount for him to comprehend. And here, outside this city called Salem, which is actually Jerusalem, with this man who he'd never seen before, who came from nowhere, and by the way, disappeared into nowhere. If you wanted to do another exercise, this would probably be more useful, but I know somebody who spent his whole life actually working on who Melchizedek actually was. Because he came from nowhere. He had no beginning and he had no end. And there's a whole heap of theories out there for you to get confused in. But I would remind you that if the Bible needed us to know where he came from and where he went to, then it would tell us. Suffice to say that as this man Melchizedek is actually speaking, Abram recognizes the voice of his God. And he recognized that the victory that he'd won was due to this God, who he's getting to know. Do you know, this, for me, I see this being an aha moment for Abraham. The moment when the penny kind of drops. Because he gave his tithe, his tenth, out of a grateful heart. Oh Lord, I'm so grateful to you. Doesn't that song say it so beautifully? It does. I'm so grateful to you. I'm so grateful to you. And I wonder sometimes when we bring our offering, whether we bring it out of a grudging, well, I suppose I should. Yeah? You know, you sort of, you look at the bank balance and you kind of like weigh up whether you can afford it or not. You know what I'm saying? And you think, No, not this week. Not this week. I won't bother this week. I'm not grateful enough this week. Not that, please, not that. I was once told by a Christian it was fine for Christians living in London not to tithe because houses are so expensive. Well, it's a novel thought, but it's got nothing to do with the gratefulness of my heart. So, I think inadvertently, but it's okay. I don't know how Abraham chose a 10th and not an 8th or an 11th or a 12th or I don't know, whatever. It was what he felt a fitting amount. And it was a fine result, if you like, if you want to call it that. He's met this stranger. He recognizes in the voice of this stranger this truth that could only come from the God who made the promise to him. He responded to that promise. And did you notice how at the same time, where? Help me out. Where does it say about giving the bread and the wine? It's right there. It's right in front of me. 18. There we are. Sorry. Yes. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God Most High. So he was a king and he was a priest. He gave Abraham a blessing and he brought bread and wine as a sustenance to this traveling group of 318 plus one, I don't know. Plus, oh yes, then it would be plus Lot and his family. So what was that? He had 2 daughters, did he? And so anyway, let's say 320 odd people. He brought this sustenance out. And in the blessing, he was given bread and wine. I don't think that was a coincidence. I don't think that was an accident. Because what we see in Melchizedek, and what we could do as a separate exercise on a separate day, is to actually look at the whole theological argument, if you like, around Melchizedek, because that is opened up in Hebrews. We could ask Maria to do it for us, couldn't we? Because essentially Melchizedek is a foreshadowing of somebody who was coming. And God chose Abram to actually come close to him. And Abram's response led God to say to Abram, I not only have taken you on this journey to win that battle and to go through all of that and to show you this and to bring you to that place, but I'm going to take you to another place. And later, he would come back to this place where he is in front of Melchizedek. But this time, he'll be with Isaac. And this time, he'll be climbing a mountain. And this time, he's going to be asked to share in the story of salvation for mankind. Because as Abraham at that point, sorry, just in case you hadn't cottoned on to that, Abraham is the name for father, yeah? Abraham is the name for father of nations, all right? Okay. Because God was fulfilling his promise. He was opening up. So as Abraham lived longer, the story unfolded, and that's how the name came to him. And as Abraham, with his son Isaac, climbing up the mountain, God is sharing with his friend. God is sharing with his friend this critical part of salvation's story, where God is essentially saying to Abraham, there's going to come a time when I'm doing this, and my son, like your son, walking up this hill, is going to walk up this hill. Like your son has got the wood on his back. For the sacrifice that's going to be made, my son is going to be carrying the wood on his back. For the sacrifice that he's going to make. He's sharing with his friend the biggest story in history. Because Abraham was faithful to the promise. And when faced with this choice, he paid his tithe out of a heart of gratitude. Now, I want to teach you something now about gratitude that just might have escaped your notice. We're going to move on into the New Testament. I don't know if you have ever done this sum, by the way, but that means that we've moved on 2,000 years. Okay? So 2,000 years from today back to this story, and 2,000 years back from this story is where Abraham was. So that's a thing, isn't it? Right. What am I going to do? I'm going to look at Luke chapter 17, and I'm going to just read the whole of the scripture here, but enough of it to make sure that you're on the page. There's not very many verses anyway. Luke chapter 17. Now remember here, this story, the illustration, the purpose of this illustration is to show us what happens when our hearts become grateful. Okay? That's the lesson we're about to learn, just in case the penny hasn't dropped. Now, Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. He traveled along the border, we're on verse 11, between Samaria and Galilee, and he was going to a village. 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go, show yourself to the priest." And as they went, they were cleansed. As they went, they were, do you want to say it? As they went, they were cleansed. We'll come back to that word in just a minute. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. He was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." Do you want to say that with me? Your faith has made you well. Let's say it one more time. Your faith has made you well. Why did the person who wrote this scripture choose a different word at that point? What was the word we read earlier on? Was the word cleansed. And now it's the word well. Now if you look into these things like my wife does, with great enthusiasm. I didn't ask about this one, by the way. I just liked it. I found this out all on my own. Oh dear. Okay. Because there is no doubt, is there, that when this guy, this foreigner, comes back, when he saw he was healed, he came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. He was a Samaritan. I have to tell you, it was out of a grateful heart. It was out of a grateful heart. This guy was doing something different from the other 9 because he had a different heart. But what is the difference that he got? We've moved from cleansed to well. Well, yeah, okay. What we've actually done is to move from katharizo, which is you've been made well, cleansed, purified, purged, okay, to well. Well, the word that's used for well is sozo. Now, we know that word, don't we? Well, some of us do anyway. What does sozo mean? It means to save, to deliver, to protect, to give salvation to. This one leper was not only healed that day, he was granted salvation. Because he had a grateful heart. I think that is stunning. And I think that's another aha moment. We all need an aha moment. You know that? We do. Do you know, some of us, when we initially become a Christian, we become a Christian because, I don't know, there is an irrefutable argument, shall we say, that what's in front of us must be right, so therefore I'm going to respond to what must be right. But there is another leap from that to having that change of heart, which makes me grateful. And we need to get to that place. We all need to be in that place. How else could it be that Abraham, becoming Abraham, actually gets to the point where he's trudging up that hill with his only son, the one that he knows is the fulfillment of the promise that God made to him. And God is saying, I want you to sacrifice him. And there must have been an oh no going on somewhere inside him. And yet because he was God's friend and because he recognized God working in his life and because Abraham could look back over several mistakes he made, he wasn't perfect. There were several mistakes. We're not going to go there today. But there were enough mistakes for us to recognize that as Abraham was walking towards this mountain, that he must have been saying, well, I did this wrong, and I did that wrong, and I did it, but God. And oh, I wish I hadn't done this, and I wish I hadn't done that, but God. And thinking, this this son who's walking with me is the... There must be something else to this story. It must be that as I go through this, he's going to do something. I don't know what it is he's going to do, but he's going to do something. All I need to do is to do exactly what I'm told. I will make one more step, one more step, one more step. I will lay my son on the altar. I will tie him down. I will get my knife out. I'll go one more step. I'll go one more step. Lord, I don't understand. Lord, I don't understand this. How are you going to raise him up? But he decided to be that faithful man because he'd had that aha moment. He'd had that visit. He'd had that opportunity. And he had lived his life in that gratefulness. And now we've come to where we are today. Because all of this, remember, is God saying, it was perfect, it became imperfect, and it just has got to be perfect again. And I want to take you on that journey. He says that to you this morning. I want to take you on that journey. I want you to battle with the 4 kings and the 5 kings. I want you to come away from that victorious. I want you to recognize that it's only me that could have done that for you. I want you to understand that because I'm this big God, I can do anything. Anything. And he can do it for you. And he reaches out to us day after day after day. In patience, in love, in understanding, longing for us to have that aha moment. Longing for us to walk in that victory. He wants everything to be perfect. Everything. He wants your health to be perfect. He wants your marriage to be perfect. He wants your family to be perfect. He doesn't want you to be short of money. He might not want you to be a trillionaire. Who cares about that? I wouldn't want that. You know, I wouldn't want that. I said to the Lord this week only, thank goodness I'm not that man. I seriously wouldn't want that. Do you look at him and see the picture of happiness? Sorry. Put all that away. He wants you to have enough. He wants you to be blessed. He wants to bring you into that place. And that is why this morning we've left the communion until now. We've left giving till now. And we're going to invite you for ministry too. Because all these things for Abraham on that day all came together in one thing. He'd gone and fought his 4 kings and his 5 kings. He got his family back. He got to that point where there was victory. And then he said to this man who appeared from nowhere and disappeared into nowhere, I recognize who you are. I recognize where you're coming from. And I am going to acknowledge my God.